Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the TRS ActiveCare Benefit Administrator Technical Training for the 23-24 plan year. Can everybody hear me? You can just write in the chat there. Yes, we're good. Okay. So my name is Marissa Campuzano. I'm here representing TRS. Today we have Corey from B-Swift joining us. He will walk us, he'll be our guide and walk us through the technical training. If you have any technical issues with our webinar software, please go to, with the software, go to webinar. I will post some troubleshooting links in the chat that might help you troubleshoot some of those issues. Also, if you have any issues, I often find that simply signing off and logging back into the webinar works. You can try that too. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to post those questions in the questions box and we'll answer your questions as we go. Okay, so now, now we know everybody's question on the question on everybody's mind today here is when are the rates coming out? At the board meeting on May 30th, rates will be approved, and after that, rates will be posted on our website. And as some of you already know, starting September 1st of 2023, TRS ActiveCare prescription drug coverage will now be through Express Scripts. Express Scripts will be the new prescription carrier for our HD primary and primary plus plans. We'll definitely talk a little bit more about that when we get to our benefits trainings in June. We'll have more information on that. If you have not already signed up for those benefit trainings in the benefit administrator trainings in June, we'll drop a link in the chat so you can sign up for those. And you can find a posting when we give you that link there. Now, B-Swift will be discussing many topics today, including the role for TRS ActiveCare, annual enrollment, file timing, ID cards, termination, summer deferment, billing discrepancies, key dates to remember, handle access to care. They will take on, we'll also take a small break in between all of that information and go through high points of the admin guide that often come up. Also, as part of the handouts, we did post the complete training on the handouts, and we'll post a link as well for the admin guide for the new plan year. And that'll be the link will be posted in the chat as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Corey from B-Swift.
All right, thanks, Marissa. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Gillum. I am one of the personnel from B-Swift. I am typically the lead over the day-to-day activities for the BA Advocate team. So just going to discuss some information with you today. I may or may not have some additional presenters later in the presentation. If not, then you'll spend a lot of time with me today. But otherwise, we will jump right into it. All right, so let's talk about B-Swift in relationship with the TRS ActiveCare account. So B-Swift has a slew of responsibilities. One of the main responsibilities is that we are to have a portal that can be utilized by a small district or a large district, no matter what size they are, to be able to do the enrollment. A lot of districts I know are not always aware of this. Some districts feel like they have to use a TPA or a third-party administrator. That is actually a choice. So just regardless of the size of your district, just know that if you wanted to, you would have the capability or the option to be able to enter your enrollments directly into the B-Swift portals. B-Swift is also responsible for the monthly billing. So each month you receive a notification, you would go out to your B-Swift portal into the library section and pull your monthly bill. Now those bills aren't paid in the B-Swift system. You still would need to go out to the TestNet system. But again, B-Swift is responsible for generating those monthly bills for your district each month. We're also the clearinghouse, or what I like to call kind of the middleman. So what your TPA does, if you have a TPA, they gather and compile all of your data from your employees' elections and demographic information. They send that over in electronic file format over to B-Swift. We then process that file and load it into our system. We also look for anything that may have errored out, and then we provide those back to you, which we'll discuss later, later today. But again, we're kind of that middle man where the information is sent to us, we gather it, process it, and then we send it out to all of the carriers, whether it be your medical carrier, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or if it's your pharmacy carrier, currently CVS Caremark, and then going into the new plan year, it'll be Express Scripts. We're the ones that are sending those files to them as well. We also are responsible to ensure that there is service or a team that is available to assist each and every district throughout, not just for open enrollment, but this is throughout the entire plan year. So that team name, you'll hear referred to as the Benefit Advocate or Benefit Administrator Advocate team, also known as the BAA team. Each of you on this call will have an assigned BAA advocate that you can get in contact with. Most of you should be familiar, or if you're not familiar, you can look at the BA Toolkit. So if you go to the BA Toolkit and you click on the DA Directory tab, right kind of mid of that page will be a listing of each BA advocate. It'll show you what region they're assigned to. It also will show their email address as well as their direct contact number. For this team, you can contact them for things such as any type of billing discrepancies or file discrepancies, any eligibility errors that you would come across at all. If you're needing to file an exception or not sure to file an exception or want to know how to file an exception, you can contact this team. We also assist with discrepancy reports in COBRA once a year, or one time, I won't say once a year, one time per year. We also assist with the ACA reporting. So you'll get a notice or notification that your ACA reports are ready. You can go into the BSwift system, pull those. And if you need to talk through anything, again, you can contact the VA Advocate team and they'll be here to assist you. Now, I mentioned them having the direct contact information on the website. Also, if you need us to follow up with you, feel free to put that in the chat as well. We can definitely get that done today. Otherwise, if you're for some reason unable to reach your assigned advocate, you always can reach out to our general contact line. We're here in the office, or we're here online rather, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then of course, you can always send us an email as well. Now the email is open. However, we're not here on the weekend, so we will respond back to those emails first thing Monday morning. All right, so let's take a look back. So 2022 was a very productive year. I think probably everyone on this call recognized the volume of TRS as a whole, but we just kind of wanted to give you high level results from like an overall standpoint. So in 2022, that BA team that we were just talking about, they were able to process and resolve over 12,000 BATs. And literally what a BAT is just a ticket that has come into our, whether it be phone or email, whether it was direct or general, any inquiry that would have come in, those are created tickets, and you'll hear us refer to those as BATs. Over 3,200 of those required us to do a manual update. So this means we would have either had to reach out directly to Blue Cross Blue Shield or do the same for CVS Caremark in efforts to get a manual update done. And then also sometimes that also means following, that particular case through for, until it's received on the file. We were able to speak with over 1,000 unique districts, which was almost every single district under the TRS umbrella in 2022. We also, from a TPA standpoint, we processed over 55,000 files. So we'll talk a little bit about file timing here in just a little bit. But yes, throughout the course of 2022, over 55,000 files were processed. We sent out over 520 files to the carriers. So again, we talked about sending it to CVS, sending it over to Blue Cross Blue Shield. And again, we were able to do over 500 of those as well. And then at the end of the day, we talked about our responsibilities, and one of our main responsibilities is the monthly billing. So throughout the course of 2022, we processed over 13,000 district bills for each of the individual districts. Now I know these are some really high numbers, and it's not to to show what BSwift does. This is really to show as a partnership what we're doing together. There's no way we could have completed or resolved these BATs or these manual updates without the participation of the district context that we're working with on a daily basis. So in all, this slide is truly a thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your responses as the team is reaching out and getting back to us timely, and just understanding that we all have the same goal of making sure that your employees have a true access to care. I'm sorry, have true access to care anytime they need it. All right, so now that we've talked about 2022, I'm sure this is top of everyone's radar. Let's talk about the 2023-2024 enrollment information. So 2023-2024 will be a passive enrollment. If you're not familiar with what that means, that simply means if your employee who's currently still actively employed does not make any changes, doesn't take any action on their elections for the upcoming plan year, everything as they have it right now will roll over. We do encourage them, even if it is passive, to still go into the system, still check your demographic information, make sure that address is correct, make sure the email address is correct, because all of that plays a vital part in the ongoing, service that we're providing and being able to get in touch with the employees as need be. And I know that is the same for you guys as well. Marissa talked a little bit about the board meeting on May 30th. So yes, that'll be the date that the rates are approved and announced. You can visit the TRS website for a couple of things. So on that website will also be a link to that meeting. So if you want to listen in, you are more than welcome to listen into that meeting. As well as on that TRS website, that is where the rates will be announced and published as well. So you can visit that TRS website to be able to see what the actual rates are for your region. We'll talk a little bit more about rates later on in the presentation as well. There is one notable change this year to the pharmacy vendor. So right now, currently it is CVS Caremark. Going into the 23-24 plan year, it will actually be Express Scripts, or you may hear us refer to them as ESI. Everything right now is set up to work almost exactly the same, so there isn't any huge changes or anything that's needing to be done. We are working through file testing and just some of the implementation tasks when bringing on the new vendor. But right now, everything is working good. Should be fine. There will be two enrollment windows. You'll hear us refer to the first one as kind of the primary enrollment window. This begins on July the 10th, and it's going to last all the way out through August the 17th of 2023. This is for those that will have the coverage intact in place and in the system by 9/1. You'll also hear us refer to an additional enrollment window, which is the supplemental period or the supplemental window. This begins on August the 18th, and it lasts all the way through August the 31st. Now, this particular window is something that should be used for BAs or district contacts only. It's not something that should be published or advertised to the employee. However, it is something that you can have in your back pocket should that employee come in on the 19th or on the 20th and say, hey, I really need to make a change. I forgot to do it during my standard open enrollment window. Is it okay if I do it? Then you can rest assured and let them know that yes, you can take care of it until the enrollment is fine, as normal, and then everything should work out fine. But again, that supplemental window or that supplemental enrollment period is just for you guys. It's just for the benefit administrators. All right, so let's talk a little bit about file timing. So most of you or some of you on this call will definitely have a TPA or a third-party administrator. So the last inbound file from your TPA will come to BSwift on August the 18th of 2023. Now, this is where we expect any of those August new hires, any termination, newborns, any of those transactions that would have occurred end of July, first part of August should be in the system and on that file. We'll receive the actual AE file no later than the 22nd. We expect it on the 21st, but again, no later on the 22nd should we have that received. Our first ongoing file for the new plan year, it'll be on September the 1st. So this is just the standard ongoing. We'll talk about file timing on the next slide as well. But every Friday, we receive a file, and again, those will start on September the 1st, that first Friday of the plan year. Every so often, the last of the month falls a little bit far from that last file date, from the inbound file date. So give an example, if we receive the inbound file on the 25th, but then again, there's 4 or 5 days after that where there's some activity going on. In efforts to get a more accurate bill, we will offer your TPAs the option to send an off-cycle file. This is something that the TPAs are already engaged in, so there isn't any additional action or communication that you need to have. It's something that we're already doing or ongoing with the TPAs. But again, every so often, again, we'll ask for an off-cycle file from your TPA. Again, and the goal is to just make your end of month bill or the next bill that much more accurate. Dual plan year files, we'll have 2 of those. First one will be received on September the 21st. And then the next one will be received on the 19th. Now, if you're not familiar with what a dual plan year file is, the dual plan year file is, so as you know, we'll be receiving the ongoing, so the current plan year, 2023-24, but there is, sometimes a need to go back and make updates and correct records for previous plan years, so anything prior to 9/1, anything 8/31 or before. And again, those records, those updates will be coming on the dual plan year files. And again, I'll tell you the dates of September 21st is the first one, and then October the 19th as the next one to be received from your TPA. All right, so we talked about the inbound. Let's talk just a little bit about outbound carriers, file timing. So the files that we're sending out to the carriers, that will begin processing on the 28th of August. So we'll process those, we'll send those out. And then the first ongoing file to include, remember we talked about that supplemental enrollment information. So those kind of the later records that are received or the later elections are received, those should go over to the carrier on the 9/7 file. So I do want to just pause this real quick because I don't want to cause any alarm. If for any reason that you have an employee that needs access to care or needs that record updated prior to that, then you would just follow your standard access to care process of contacting the VA advocate team, and then we'll work through to make sure that they're able to access their care. Blue Cross Blue Shield files are sent on Monday and Thursday, and this is for the self-insured. So you'll see that SI there, that means for self-insured. For our HMOs, which is the Blue Essentials, they have the West and they have the South plan, as well as the Baylor Scott White plan. Those are sent on Wednesday of each week. And then Express Scripts, just as we do for CVS currently, we'll be passing those every single weekday. So every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Express Scripts will receive an updated file to ensure the best accuracy as far as the enrollment. So if we had to do a chart, we would show Monday and Thursday Blue Cross Blue Shield, self-insured, Wednesdays, HMOs, and then every single day for the RX carrier, in this case, Express Scripts. So we also talked about those dual plan year files on the previous slide. So as we receive them from your TPAs, then our next duty as the clearinghouse is to send them out. So we'll send that first dual plan year file to the carriers on 9/25/2023, and then we'll send out that supplemental dual plan year file on 10/23/2023. And you definitely want to make sure that, again, you've taken all precautions, you've taken every step necessary to ensure all of those transactions are on those 2 dual year plan year files, because you don't want to cause yourself any additional actions or steps or work, for the lack of better words, to be able to get your transactions updated and done.
And Corey, I think it's important here too, just to remind the reason why we're showing this outbound carrier file, inbound carrier file. It's good for you to know, to help set those expectations with your employees. So they're going to enroll during a window, or they think, well, I did it today, and we want immediate updates. We completely understand that they would want that, but there is some timing implications that we do want to make sure are accounted for. So this helps you set those appropriate expectations so they're not knocking at your door 2 days later asking where the file is, so you can give them a good window to expect that.
Absolutely. Great point, Colin. And I didn't introduce him earlier, but that is Colin Oliver. He's our service leader director over here at bswift for the TRS account, but you'll probably be hearing more from him later. But yeah, thanks, Colin. All right, so now I'm going to hand it off to Kim to Carter, one of our analysts here, and she's going to discuss some of the end of year processing.
Thank you, Corey. Hello, everyone. As Corey stated, my name is Kim Carter, and I am an analyst with bswift. Today, I'll be discussing terminations and summer deferment. So let's jump into terminations. Terminations will not be accepted on the TPA files until it is within 30 days of that termination date. Now, this is important to note because any terminations that are received more than 30 days prior to the term date, they will not be processed and it will generate an error on your discrepancy report. If your TPA does not continue to resend that term or send it at that appropriate time, it will, fall off the file. And, if that discrepancy goes unworked, then you may continue to be billed for that employee. This file rule has not changed from the previous years. It's something that has always been in place. But one thing that we will be doing differently this year is requesting terminations to be entered by mid-July. We will request a listing from your TPA so that we can exclude these termed members from being sent over to Express Scripts, the new carrier, which will prevent them, your employees or ex-employees from receiving incorrect pharmacy cards from being generated. That listing should be sent to us by your TPA on 7/21. So July 21st is when we'll expect that listing. Term changes should be submitted on the regular TPA files or updated in bswift if you are a bswift user. We do want to mention that it's extremely important to audit your September bill for any discrepancies. We expect terminations to be processed accordingly, but if for any reason there's an error or someone gets missed in your system, this would be a good way to catch them, is if you review your September bill for discrepancies and terminations. All right, let's talk about summer deferment. So summer deferment rule allows any employee, whether teachers, bus drivers, janitors, no matter your contract, if you're an employee that has worked through the last instructional day of the school year, they may continue coverage with your district through 8/31. If your employee is covered with your district through 8/31, but elects coverage with another district prior to 9/1, we will process the newer effective date and term coverage with your district. So example, members enrolled in coverage with District A through 8/31, but then is hired with District B, let's say June 28th, and then elects coverage for July 1st. The July 1st will be the newer effective date, and coverage will be termed with your district for 6/30, so June 30th. It is extremely important to communicate coverage termination dates with employees who plan to leave your district, as well as it is best practice to ask new employees about previous employment with other districts, what coverage dates, their ending coverage dates would be with the previous district. And in cases that they may not know that information, you may also reach out to your BAA for assistance with those dates. The only instance in which this rule doesn't apply is if your new hire is coming from a TRS district that is leaving TRS. If you submit an effective date prior to 9/1, for instance, 8/1, and your employee is enrolled in coverage through 8/31 with a district that is leaving, coverage will remain through the other district through 8/31, and will update the effective date for your district to 9/1. If you have any questions regarding that, you may also reach out to your BAA. But that is all that I have, and I will be passing it on to Elise Buford to discuss handling discrepancies.
Thank you, Kim. Good morning, everyone. As you stated, my name is Elise Buford, and I am the Benefit Administrator Advocate for Regions 2, 13, and 14. And today I'll speak with you about handling discrepancies. Now, this process does not only identify discrepancies, but also allows us to work together to resolve eligibility issues before they cause a delay in access to care for your employees. And first, we'll get into billing. Bills post the first of each month. On the first workday of each month, you'll be able to access your bills in both PDF and Excel formats from the library on the bSwift portal. Now, for the month of September, the bill will post on September 8th. It's crucial that you review and audit your September bill because discrepancies must be reported by September 19th to be considered for adjustment on the next invoice. Keep in mind that submitting discrepancies after this date does not mean that they will not be resolved, but it is a best practice date to give us ample time to resolve them before the next invoice. Also, please be mindful of the importance of reviewing and auditing your bills each month. Corrections must be reported in the bSwift portal within 45 days of the effective date of the change, and this is to avoid the requirement of filing an exception. And we'll go more in depth about exceptions in just a moment, but just please make note that they must be reported in the bSwift portal within 45 days of the effective date of the change. Payments are due by the 15th of the month, and if the 15th of the month is not a business day, payment is due by the last business day prior to the 15th. It is very important that you pay the amount that's on your TextNet bill monthly. While the amount may not match what is showing on your payroll, making an underpayment would trigger an alert. So after paying the bill, if you notice any discrepancies, please contact your BA advocate if you find any. You may have already saved, or your BA advocate will provide you with the billing and corrections form that you use to report your monthly billing discrepancies. If you don't already have this Excel document saved, please reach out to your BA advocate so that you're prepared to report these discrepancies. Especially with annual enrollment amongst us, this tiny proactive step will save so much time when completing your September bill audit. After you receive the completed billing and corrections form, your BA advocate will then perform an extensive review and will respond to your inquiry in a timely manner. And hopefully this is done in time for the next invoice, but if not, we will communicate that with you. So please, if you don't have that form, reach out to your BA advocate so that we can ensure that you have it. You will receive a monthly bill every month. A monthly bill email every month. Please review these emails for important notifications. These notifications are not just billing alerts, but they may include training and meeting invites, and they even include our new bSwift office hours. And these sessions provide an opportunity for you to get assistance with frequently asked questions and so much more. I've spoken with previous BAs, and they've told me that these new office hour sessions that we're having have provided an open line to share information with us on the BA advocate team and some other BAs as well. And we are so excited to be able to provide this additional support for you all. So please continue to review your monthly bill emails for these important notifications. And now we will move on to discrepancy reports. So for annual enrollment and ongoing, both you and your TPA should know what is on your discrepancy report. Please know that every discrepancy represents one of your employees that may need your support. As I said earlier, this process has not only identified, but has truly helped resolve eligibility issues before they've impacted the employee's access to care. It's important that you partner with your TPA to determine how these are being worked and to set expectations on what is needed from you to ensure that these discrepancies are not only reviewed but are reported timely. New reports post after each file. For example, your TPA files are received weekly on Fridays. Therefore, your discrepancy report is generated and is available each Monday. These reports are available to you in the Connections drop-down folder in your bSwift portal. Again, it is very important to review your discrepancy reports on an ongoing basis. And please contact your BA advocate to report both billing and file discrepancies, as they are reported two separate ways. If you need some one-on-one training on where to review your discrepancy reports, how they must be filed, or to just get some information or some assistance on a smooth flow of reporting the discrepancies, please reach out to your BA advocate directly so that we can set up some time with you to make sure that you are comfortable with the process. As Corey mentioned earlier in the presentation, please also remember that these prior year files will need to be worked in their entirety. If they are not received by the 1019 file, there will be a manual intervention needed. I'd like to leave you with a scenario that highlights the importance of reviewing and auditing your discrepancy reports. So let's say you have an employee that should be eligible for benefits as of May 1st. And it's Tuesday, May 9th, and you realize that the employee is not showing active benefits in bSwift. So you reach out to your BA advocate to try to have an urgent update made with the carrier. Now, it is important to note that these manual updates are temporary and that bSwift must be updated for the changes to remain effective. Following all of this, your BA advocate quickly resolves the member's eligibility and then tells you that the ticket, or as we call them, BATs, will remain open pending your TPA's weekly file that's received on Friday. Once you return to work on Monday morning, you access your discrepancy report and you notice that that same employee is listed and it has an error. And you check their bSwift profile and you notice that there is not updated coverage to match what you submitted to the TPA. So you'll then work with your TPA and your BA advocate to resolve whatever issue is causing the employee's coverage to not show active in bSwift. Now, had you not reviewed your discrepancy report and caught the error, the employee's bSwift profile would remain inactive, would show no active coverage, and future eligibility files that are sent to the carrier, how Corey discussed, we send those on Mondays and Thursdays. If bSwift remains showing inactive coverage, those future ongoing files would match what we show in bSwift, regardless of the previously requested update that we made or what you've submitted to the TPA if that error is not resolved. So to avoid this, please continue to review your discrepancy reports weekly on an ongoing basis. Review them, work with your TPA, reach out to your BA advocate. And as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly or in the general mailbox or by phone, as Corey provided earlier in the presentation, if you have any questions or need additional assistance. And I will be handing it back over to Corey to speak with you about exceptions.
All right, thanks, Elise. All right, so as she mentioned, let's talk a little bit about exceptions. And I know this is probably the most least favorite word regarding anything to do with like an enrollment, election, or a transaction. Trust me, our job and our goal is to avoid these 100%, but we do recognize and understand there's going to be situations that come across or that occur that we just have to file an exception for. So a couple of things to remember about an exception. First, make sure that it is indeed past the 45-day mark in regards to the processing guidelines, or you hear us refer to them as the PGs. If it's within the 45 days, there is no additional exception that is needed. You should be able to go in and update that transaction fine without any problems. Now, if a employee comes to you and wants to make a change and it's outside of that 45 days, or they missed their 31 or 30-day period to do the special enrollment, then yes, the exception is required, and you would need to go ahead and do so as the district contact. Now, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, that supplemental enrollment window that is going to be open at the end of August, that is still your opportunity to be able to get those elections in and not have to file any type of exception. So that is what that enrollment window is for, and definitely encourage you all to utilize that for sure. It's a great resource. Do you want to, again, we mentioned it earlier, we want to make sure not to file any exceptions if they're truly not needed. You want to make sure that it's something that is what we call a good cause, or basically a good reason. But if you're ever not sure, or if you're not sure what guidance to take, and if something does indeed require exception, I am going to definitely encourage you to connect with your BA advocate. Not only will they be able to guide you on if the exception is needed, but they can also go a step further. And if there's any training needed in regards to any walkthroughs or exception tips, tricks, things like that to get those entered correctly, the BA advocate can provide you with that as well. So we talked about what makes a good exception. And really, the key there is just making sure that it's outside of the guidelines. I can't tell you or stress enough how many times we've had exceptions filed where BAs or district contacts have went through that full process, and it really truly ended up did not need an exception, and it really was not a good value of time. So in efforts to save your time and make sure that it's really needed, again, the first step is to make sure that it's past those 45-day guidelines. And then also you want to make sure that it's good cause, or you want to make sure that it's good reason. This information should be supported in the documentation that you submit with your exception. So on this exception tracker, it gives you an option to attach, or you can do screenshots, you can do emails, and then it also gives you a space there where you can just type what happened and what occurred. I will encourage you again, there's never going to be a situation where there's too much documentation for an exception. If it has any way affiliated with that employee situation, you definitely should include it for sure. The other thing with the exceptions is you always want to make sure that the employee is full aware of any potential fallout or additional financial responsibility. There's been instances or situations where the exception gets approved. However, if it's retroing back a few months, maybe 2 or 3 months, then that does require the employee to pay those back premiums. And we've had, again, a couple of situations where we went through the full exception process, the exception was approved. However, it turned out that the employee did not want to make those additional premium payments. So that is something that you'll want to discuss with them when they're asking you to file an exception, or they're asking you to make an exception on their behalf. All right, so let's talk about some key dates. We've talked about a few different dates so far throughout this presentation. Here's some that should be at the top of your radar, top priority for you. We mentioned that 5:30, May 30th, TRS board meeting. That is the regional rates decision date. You can check the website, TRS website, for those updates. On July 10th, that is when annual enrollment begins. So that's when yourself, your employees will be able to have the opportunity to get into their either TPA enrollment portals or into the BSwift enrollment portal to begin making those elections. And again, that first window will stay open until August the 17th of 2023, and then the official annual enrollment window closes. Now, August 18th is when that supplemental enrollment period begins, and it will remain open all the way out until August the 31st of 2023. As we all know, that new plan year starts every year on September the 1st. So it'll begin this year, September 1st, 2023, on that Friday. And then the September bill will post on September 8th. So one, I just want to call out there, we get this question pretty routinely every year. So although the September bill is posting just a little bit later than the first of the month, do keep in mind that the due date is still going to be on September the 15th. So by September the 15th, you would still want to log into your TRS TextNet portal in efforts to make that payment. If you review that bill, reconcile that bill, and realize that there's any type of discrepancies, again, still pay the amount that is on the bill, and then you will want to get in touch with your BA advocate for resolution on the discrepancies. October the 15th will be the last day you have to enter the 9-1 transactions. So again, to make it 100% clear, your employee must send you their elections or submit their elections by August the 31st. You as the BA, the benefit administrator, will have until October the 15th to enter all of those transactions. If that employee did not alert you or submit their elections by August the 31st, and they come in on September the 1st, that's the exceptions that we just talked about on the previous slide would have to be done. All right, last but not least, we're going to spend just a little bit of time on access to care. First, we want to try to reiterate the definition or clarify what the intent of access to care is. So access to care should be for those employees who need immediate access to care. And immediate is within 48 hours, they have an appointment, they're sitting in the doctor's office, they're on the way to the ER or the emergency room, they're at the pharmacy, they're needing to pick a prescription, they just got prescribed a prescription, they need to pick it up today. Those are immediate access to care. Now, there are other situations such as, the employee may have an appointment next week. They might have a 30-day supply of the prescription medication and they're running low, so they may need a prescription next couple of weeks. Those still are a priority to us. However, we don't necessarily list those to access to care just so we can prioritize. We want to make sure that, again, those that need the surgery tomorrow, we want to make sure that Mr. Smith who needs surgery tomorrow is not put behind, Mrs. Smith who is going to need to get to the doctor within the next couple of weeks. We'll need your help in prioritizing those and help triaging those. And then another thing with the access to care, this is something you should be working directly with your BA advocate with, as well as the BA advocate team. So if you reach out to the BA advocate team or we're reaching out on behalf of a member that's contacted Blue Cross Blue Shield or CVS, there may be instances where we have to obtain additional documentation. So this documentation should be emailed to your BA advocate. Most times you'll hear us refer to it as a consolidated enrollment form, or sometimes we also refer to it as a benefit summary page. Pretty much what it should be though, it should be something out of your TPA portal that confirms the employee demographic information as well as the benefit elections and when it was updated. And what this does is this helps us process and this helps us know or when we can expect it on the file. So earlier in the presentation, we talked about inbound found timing and outbound found timing. That is the reason why we're needing the data to update it so when we can know or when we should expect it to come over on the file. Those access to care tickets, we keep those open until those are received on the file because we have authorized the manual update. We want to ensure that it's received from your TPA correctly as well. All right. Let me do just a quick pulse, just real quick on questions and see if we've had any questions come through the chat. Doesn't look like we have. So what we're going to do here, right before we jump into the admin guide, we've done quite a bit of talking right at the 50-minute mark. So right at, I would say 10:55, we're going to start back. We're going to jump into the admin guide and pretty much go through each page and just give an extensive overview of what is covered, what pages are important, things of that nature. I will say for those that are newer BAs and those that are tenure BAs, there's going to be some vital information that you don't want to miss. So again, I will see you all back in 5 minutes, right at the 10:55 mark. All right, welcome back everyone. All right, so now we're going to deep dive into the admin guide. So this is located on the BA Toolkit. I believe the link was put into the chat. So if you click on the BA Toolkit, you can go into the document and form sections, and then it's actually the very first document that is there. So you'll see the 2023-24 admin guide. Now there's a couple of options. So as you open it, it'll appear how you see it on my screen now, as a flip book format. So it looks like a digital book where you can flip the pages and still search on things like that. You also have the option to download as a PDF. One thing to watch out for, or just to make sure of, when you click that download option as the PDF, you'll want to click full publication, as the system will automatically default to the current page that you're on for the download. So just be sure that you click full publication, and then you'll be able to download it in the PDF format. All right, so let's take a look. So on pages 2, this page you can refer to know that you always have the most updated version. So we get this question quite often, and the question is, can I receive a hard copy, or are they going to mail out hard copies of the admin guide? You can get in touch with your district ambassador for your region for more information on how to obtain the hard copy. However, we do recommend or encourage you to keep the digital link. That way you can always have the most updated or the most revised version, because you'll notice there in the top top left, the revised version or the date, to ensure that you're always looking at the most updated. Now, book doesn't change often throughout the ongoing plan year. Typically the changes are made prior to, as they've been done for this year. But again, you can always look at that page 2 to ensure you're looking at the most updated version. Pages 3 and 4 are going to list the table of contents. Now, I know all of us on this call are probably aware and know how to use a table of contents. However, I do just like to refer back to it, because it's a good way that if you have a question and you're not sure where to start or where to search, of course, there are other search options, such as just using the search option within the flipbook, or Control F or something of that nature to find what you may be looking for. But again, a good rule of thumb is to start with a table of contents. That way you can find the appropriate section, and then go ahead and proceed to those pages to get the full resolution of what you're inquiring on. I can tell you, if you have ever wondered how the BAA team or the BA advocate team is able to respond so quickly and kind of narrow down, the exact answers that they're needing, the table of contents is our go-to. So definitely a good tool to utilize for sure. All right, so on page 5, this is going to be a kind of an outline or a rundown of all the responsibilities from a BA aspect. We do understand that everyone on this call may not fully have the benefit administrator title per se, but we also understand if you're on this call, there's probably some task or some responsibility that you have that services within that role. This is also a good page that I always refer to for our newer BAs. Every so often we'll get contacted by our newer BA, and they might not be absolutely sure, what am I responsible for? What should I be doing on a day-to-day basis? What should I be doing on a monthly basis? This is typically the page that we refer to, as well as some additional training and walkthroughs. But this is, again, is a good outline of what your day-to-day roles and responsibilities should look like as a BA or a benefit administrator. All right, so looking at page 6. Page 6 is going to discuss the regional rates. So we talked about those earlier in the training, so not going to go into a bunch of detail there. Just 2 key things we want to highlight on this page are the website. So we mentioned the website a couple of times of where the rates are listed and things like that. There's also a website or an additional link where you can check your region. It doesn't happen often, but I know we've had some one-off scenarios or some one-off instances where a region may have changed or been corrected. Please note that whatever the region you were listed as on October the 4th, 2021, that is the region rate that you will be provided. So if you are one that may have had a change or something to that nature, just know that, again, whatever the region was for you on October the 4th of 2021, that is the rates that you will have. Is that going to change? As of right now, no. If there is a change that occurs and regions are updated for some reason, then of course you'll be notified and let known of that information. But as of right now, October 4th, 2021 is the date. All right, so looking at pages 7 through 9, you'll notice a ton of good information here. So this is where like plan numbers are, group numbers for all of the plans. You'll see contact information for all of the different carriers, for all of the different partners that are assisting with the TRS health plan. As well as you'll notice like TIN numbers, there's account numbers, like any of the information you might need for like paperwork within your district that you're filling out. Of course, you can always contact your VA advocate, but that information is listed here as well. And again, this includes all carriers, not just the standard ActiveCare plans, but it also has, you'll see here, Baylor Scott & White health plan contacts, websites for both the ActiveCare, I'm sorry, not ActiveCare, for both the active population and the COBRA population. And it is the same on page 9 for the HMOs for Blue Cross Blue Shield. All right, looking at pages 10 and 11. Here are all of the teams that will be supporting you through the ongoing 2023-24 plan year. So you'll see here listed is the service teams for the BAs, which includes the district ambassador team at Blue Cross Blue Shield. You also have the personal health guide, or you'll hear us refer to them as a PhD team over at Blue Cross Blue Shield. That is for benefits and claims type questions or inquiries. You've heard us talk about a few times your VA advocate team, and then Express Script will also have a clinical or a client support team to assist you as the BA as well. So you'll see that number and contact information here. All right, 12 through 15 are enrollment, and this is more geared towards those. I know we talked a little bit about people or districts that are B-SWIFT Direct versus those that use a TPA. So this enrollment information on pages 12 through 15 is really, again, geared more towards those who enter their enrollment directly into the B-SWIFT system. Definitely gives you some valuable information as to, how to add forms and things of that nature. So again, if you're one that uses B-SWIFT and you're looking to do enrollment, then you would come to these pages for the additional information.
I can probably cover some of the next ones here for you, Corey.
Good deal. Sounds good.
Let's look at page 17. So this section of the admin guide, as Corey mentioned, this is where we get a lot of our information, where we're going to refer back to if you have questions and ask us on this. A lot of meat is in these next few pages. So the first one is talking about eligibility. We get this question surprisingly quite a bit, wondering if this employee is eligible, if they're returned to work, they're a substitute, whatever the situation may be. There's a pretty simple rule here that TRS states, and it's that they are either a participating member, currently employed by an active district, and their position that is eligible for membership in the pension plan, or they're actively working and scheduled for 10 or more hours on a regular basis each week. Okay. The other thing is they would not be receiving coverage under certain other programs. That second bullet point, you'll see those programs listed there. One of them is TRS Care. That's that third one that's listed there. We did want to point that out. TRS Care, it's always been the case that if you have TRS Care, you cannot have ActiveCare. You will see that note that's been added where it states that Medicare eligible retirees are eligible to enroll in TRS ActiveCare. This is something that's relatively new. There was a BA blast sent out a few weeks ago on that, and some further clarification as well that came in another BA blast. So this is good information to know, because if an employee is on a Medicare Advantage plan, they return back to your district, they choose to pick up ActiveCare, it is a change in the rule that they can pick that up. Now, Corey, if you flip to the next page, this is a great reference for you on on why that wouldn't necessarily be the best thing. If you look at the bottom there, it does, of course, indicate that they are eligible to pick this coverage up. But note that if they enroll in ActiveCare and they keep their TRS care Medicare coverage, they're going to have 3 premiums. They're going to have their ActiveCare premium through you. They're going to have their TRS care premium to TRS. They're going to have their Medicare premium that they owe to the federal government. And it's not providing them really any extra coverage because the Medicare Advantage plan and the Medicare take care of everything. So it will not be in their best interest to pick up the ActiveCare plan, but they're entitled to it. So just to make you aware of that, we know it can be a difficult conversation. And of course, you're getting into the TRS care retiree piece as well, which is not your normal comfort zone. So in situations where it's identified that somebody has coverage across ActiveCare and care plans, TRS is going to have a representative reach out to help explain that to the employee slash retiree to help them understand what's in their best interest and to make sure that they're using their retirement funds to the best of their ability by not paying extra premium. But we did want to point that out because this is a new section in the guide, and if you're looking at it wondering what that's all about, well, that's what it's all about. On page 19, it's just got a really simple definition as well. We had one on the page before talking about who's eligible for TRS ActiveCare. This one just reminds you that, you know, when it comes to ActiveCare, it's anybody working for your district. It could be a teacher, it could be an admin, it could be the substitute, the bus driver, whoever it is in the district. If they're working for you, they would be eligible. It does also indicate, though, that, of course, there is that 10-hour requirement or participation in the pension. And then for substitutes and return to work retirees, that those are always going to be considered part-time, regardless of the hours worked. Okay. So just keep that in mind under there, that if they are in that substitute or return to work retiree position, they are considered a part-time employee. Now, part-time employees absolutely are eligible to enroll in TRS ActiveCare, but again, we just wanted to make sure that that was noted, and we'll talk a bit more about why the differentiation between part-time and full-time matters on a coming page. So page 20 gets into dependent eligibility. This is just a good reference one as well. We do often get questions, is this dependent eligible? I think one of the biggest ones that we get is around domestic partnerships. And it's something that some plans do cover, but TRS does not. So for the purposes of TRS, for a spouse eligibility, it needs to be a spouse. It could also be a common law spouse, but in a situation where it's common law, we would want to make sure that those employees are aware that they would need to have a declaration on file with the state agency to make that legally recognizable. As far as other dependents, children are covered in whatever capacity they're a child, stepchild, foster child, natural, adopted. Grandchildren can be covered as well if they meet certain criteria. And then other dependents could be covered also. When we say any other dependent, what could that mean? Well, let's say that somebody's staying with you and your household for a period of time, for whatever the reason. If they qualify based upon those 4 criteria under that any other dependent bullet point on the left side, then they could be an eligible dependent for you under the TRS ActiveCare plan. So if you ask us if somebody is eligible to be covered, this is where we're going to reference back to. This is what we're going to point you to. On page 21, it talks about another dependent that could be covered, and this is a disabled dependent. So if you have a dependent child that is within your district and they are turning 26, normally they would be dropped from the plan because they're no longer eligible based upon age. The exception to that is if they are a disabled dependent. Now, that is not simply the employees telling you that they're disabled or them checking a box. They do need to actually submit documentation for that to be reviewed and approved. So that documentation goes over to Blue Cross Blue Shield. They make the review and approval in cooperation with TRS. They get that information to us so that we can update a flag in the BSwift portal to allow that record to pass, and then the employee is eligible to cover that dependent. So just bear in mind, if you try to send a dependent over the age of 26 and we don't have that approval on file, the record will error. All right, let's move on to the next page here. So page 22.
Colin, just real quick, just one thing to add on the disabled dependents is, because we get this question as well from the Be Advocate team. The forms are sent to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that is for the ActiveCare, TRS ActiveCare plans, as well as the HMO plan. So although they may not be the carrier for the employee, the form itself for the disabled dependent still goes over to Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Good point, Corey. All right, on this page, we're talking about court order dependence on the left side. So this is the one thing we wanted to point out here when it comes to court order dependence. Those directives, the orders are sent to the employer, which in this case is you. So do make sure that you are keeping those records on file, that you are setting the appropriate indicators in your system just to make sure that coverage isn't termed if there is a court order in place. Because in the case of those court orders, whether an employee wants the coverage or not, there is a directive that it has to be provided. So we want to make sure that those are staying in place. And again, those are directed to you as the employer. So whatever you pass over to us, we'd make sure that enrollment is updated. On the next page, the item that I think is of importance here, and it does talk about making changes, special enrollment events. We'll get into some of the finer details on that here in just a moment. But this gray box on the side just talks about how newborns are covered by TRS ActiveCare. So just as a reminder, newborns, they do need to contact if they want to add them to the plan. There is an automatic coverage for the first 31 days that is in place at the carrier level. But if the intent is to have that child covered within the first 31 days, they need to contact you and let you know so that they can get that update made. Now, why this is obviously a bit more of a challenge is if somebody's just given birth, they're more than likely not going to be coming to school and attending their employment for a little while. And generally it's outside the 31 days. So just preparing employees for that, letting them know before they go out on maternity leave, paternity leave, whatever it is, that they do need to get that contact made, get that information over to you so you can get them added. And then based upon the effect or when that child is born and when they're added, there are some other variables as far as the effective date that we'll talk about here in just a moment. But we just wanted to put this on here as well, just to make sure that you're aware. You see that bold halfway down too, where it says it's not necessary to wait for the social. That's a holdup sometimes. People wait to get we've seen these exceptions where they've been submitted to add a newborn because they were waiting for social or other information. We just need the name and date of birth to get that child added. So that's really the basics on it. And once we have that, we can get that updated. And then, later on when they provide the social, we can just add that later. On page 24, 25, this is where it talks about one of the special enrollment events that we experience pretty regularly, and that's loss of coverage. So of course you've got divorce or you got birth, marriage, things like that are a qualifying event. The loss of coverage is qualifying event in some situations as well. The finer points for TRS that we'd like to focus on are really those reasons why loss of coverage might not be considered qualifying. So in general, if you lose eligibility elsewhere, then that is going to cause you to lose coverage that would fall under a provision to allow you to pick up TRS. But the key thing there is that it is a true loss of coverage and not simply a decision that the employee has made to change coverage elsewhere. Because if they've done that, they have had a voluntary loss of coverage. They've chosen to lose coverage, and that would not qualify them for TRS. Some of the things that we've seen over time are all listed here. This is one of those points where I think the first time the question came up about spousal surcharge, I said, well, I have no idea. I went looking in the admin guide, and sure enough, it was in there. So we were prepared for it. But increase in the cost of the other plan, if they reduce contributions to premium, if there is like a spousal surcharge, anything like that, if the benefits are just not as good as they were, they went over to an HDHP plan and they liked their old copay plan or whatever it might be. If they choose to drop coverage due to those reasons, they can get on TRS when they experience a qualifying event, which is either going to be annual enrollment or some other event, but it would not be considered under loss of coverage. The next page where it talks about employee dropping coverage during the plan year, and actually, Corey, if you go back to that last page there, when it talks about in that gray box, can an employee drop health coverage during the plan year? The short and simple answer to that is yes, they can. One of the things that we do want to point out, though, is that if you are going to exercise the provision to drop coverage, you do need to make sure that you're within compliance to your district's cafeteria 125 plan, and some of those plans don't allow that. So you would need to keep that in consideration and make sure that you are checking with your 125 administrator so that you can make sure that you're in compliance there. Another thing to point out is if somebody drops coverage in the middle of the year, and they're allowed to do so per your district's rules, they need to wait till they experience a special enrollment event or annual enrollment if they would like to come back to the plan. So just keep that in mind. Always give them that disclaimer before they drop it, because you can't just come back to the plan after you've dropped unless you have a legitimate reason to do so. All right, Corey, you can scroll on now. Thanks, Sarah. On these pages 26, 27, one of them is talking about, military service, leave without pay. These are pretty basic provisions here that it talks about, but we want to talk about more on this one, page 27, and that's the pooling and split premiums. So you're all hopefully aware of what that is. Pooling is the idea that if you have two employees, a husband and wife, that both work for your district, and they would like to pool their state and district contributions, they're welcome to do so and stay on one plan together, like an employee spouse plan or employee family plan. They can do that, and that's within your district. If they'd like to do the same thing, but across districts, so husband works for District A, wife works for District B, and they would like to pool their funds across those districts, that's called a split arrangement. That one we need to know about. You'd have to fill out a form, send it to us so that we can go ahead and get that set up. And then when we set that up, we'll make sure that your district bill is just for half of that premium. Here's the thing that we want to point out, though. We do require splits to be renewed on an annual basis. So they do need to take the provision to renew each year. The reason why is we want people to be aware of the cost of a split. And this is an opportunity where you, the BA, are in that unique position to be able to educate your employee. But if you look at the cost of premium, if you take two employee-only plans or an employee-only plan plus an employee-child plan, and you add up what those premium costs are, it is cheaper for them to be on separate plans than it is for them to be on a plan with an employee spouse or with an employee family plan. The reason being for that is that the spouse being on a plan drives the cost of coverage up. And if they are on a split plan like that, they're not getting that employee cost kind of subsidized, as you will, based upon how TRS sets rates. Okay, so just to understand that, the rates are out there and they're set up based upon the assumption that a spouse is not working for TRS, that they're being covered a certain way. So if they would like to take the best advantage of it, it's usually a good idea to have their separate plans. We'd be happy to help you do the math on that with them or to provide you any additional resources that you need. We are not saying split should not be done, but we understand that cost is always important. And if there is an opportunity, we can tell somebody that they can get something cheaper and it's just as good, if not better, then we want to make sure that we're using that opportunity to present that to them. All right, on to the next page. This one's talking about dual enrollment. Now, dual enrollment is something that we deal with a lot on TRS, and it's when you end up with somebody that has active coverage in multiple districts. It could be two employee records. It could be that they're covered as a spouse at one, as an employee at another, a child at one, and an employee as another, a child covered under two parents' plans. Whatever the situation may be, it creates dual enrollment, and that is not allowed under TRS. So we do want to make sure that in those dual enrollment scenarios, that you understand that we're going to take action to terminate coverage from the old district and get them coverage at the new district. So the newest record will always take precedence, and we'll get that coverage updated. We're going to talk a bit more about this when we get into our summer deferment piece here towards the end, but we did want to let you know that dual enrollment is not allowed, and therefore we are obligated, based upon our agreement with TRS, to take action and keep them within compliance. These next several pages, this is page 29, I think it runs through 34, it talks about what the effective date would be. So we talked about these special enrollment events, and if somebody gets married, if they're a new hire, whatever it is, they have loss of eligibility. This tells you based upon that event, then this would be the date that they could pick for enrollment, and this would be the date when premium would start, and this would be the date that dependents would be covered. So all those dates are all outlined in here. It's a great little cheat sheet to make sure that you got the right information. But there's one that I want to point out, and specifically for newborn, and that's on this page on the left side. Now, this was updated a little bit this year to make it clear. There was a couple of examples in there that we wanted to just refine. So the way it works with a newborn child, and I mentioned we would be getting back to this, newborns are covered for those first 31 days of the carrier, but if they would like to add the child, here's the way it works. Let's say that the child is born today on May 23rd. The effective date of coverage for that child, after I go to my BA and say I want this child to be covered, is going to be May 23rd. Now, I'm currently on a primary plan, but I would like to go to Primary Plus. I can do that, but the effective date of being on Primary Plus would be 6/1. If I stay on primary, the plan I'm on, I'm going to move to an employee and child tier or employee family. That would take effect on 6/1 as well. So changes to the plan take effect the first of the month after that birth date. The only exception to that is if the child is born on the first of the month. So if they're born the very first day of the month, they would have a full month coming up. So that would be the effective date of that coverage. If it's any other date other than that, then it would be first of the following month for that to be effective. You can add other dependents as well. So you want to add the rest of the kids, or you want to add a spouse, or whatever you would like to do, you can do that. But again, those would also be effective the first of the following month. Okay, so this is a great resource to go back to and see what those effective dates would be based upon each scenario that you might encounter. And it goes on through here for several other things as well. But again, this is just a good place to look. If you have a question after looking through it, you can't 100% figure it out or make the determination, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk through it with you, but this is a pretty good start for it. All right, let's flip the page over to page 36 and talk about summer deferment. So we've talked about summer deferment. It was in the slides earlier that were presented. We talked about it just a minute ago as far as dual coverage processing. Summer deferment is, of course, that provision to allow an employee to remain covered through the end of the plan year if they work to the last day for students. It's a great provision, but there is, of course, important things to keep in mind for it. And we talked about them earlier, right? Educating employees, making sure they know what those dates are. If they are going to be covered through 8/31, telling them that so they can pick appropriately at the new district. Because again, if there's an overlapping coverage and they've got coverage in 2 districts, our obligation is to resolve that dual coverage. And we will do so by terming coverage from one district and giving it to the new district. Okay? So these examples here that it shows, this covers everything in like a normal scenario where if they've got coverage starting at one district, 8/1, what we're going to do to the district that I had it through 8/31. So pretty simple concept. The one thing that I will point out here, if you are getting an employee from a district that is leaving TRS, so let's say it's one of the districts that is leaving for 9/1/23, then we're going to actually keep the coverage through 9/1 at that district. That's the one exception to it. So we're always going to take the newest coverage, with the exception of if they are a district that is leaving TRS for 9/1, we have a limited ability to credit those districts because they're no longer active. So we need to keep that coverage as a 8/31 term date with them. And then we would need you to adjust the effective date at your district. All right, on page 37 and 38, this one talks a bit more about just how that changing employment works. We've already talked about it with summer deferment, right? That's a challenge, that's a thing, but that's end of year. Throughout the year, somebody might switch over, the mid-semester or end of semester, they want to go from one district to another, they get married, move, whatever it might be, but they end up going from one district to another district. Now, if they're still within the TRS ActiveCare program, they would not be able to change plans or experience any of those loss of coverage or qualifying events because they're ultimately staying with the same plan sponsor. I like to think of it sometimes when it comes to this that, each district is kind of a department within a company, and you wouldn't experience an event, right? If you went from payroll over to HR, you're not experiencing an event to change coverage within your district, right? So it's the same kind of principle across TRS. If you're moving from one district to another and it's in the same plan year, you're going to continue coverage under that new district with the same plan you had before. Okay, so that's the provision that's pointed out here when it talks about changing employment between districts and rehires, and that's covered on 37 and 38. If you have any questions on that, of course, reach out. We can always help clarify that. But that is the provision. That is how we will make sure that the plan is enforced when we get files in. And then on this next page, it talks about our membership process and guidelines. We've alluded to this as well, but you normally just hear it as the 45 days, right? So that's the 45 days that you have from the effective date of a change to get that enrollment in. Now that is how much time you have, 45 days from the effective date of change. The employee needs to make their decision within their appropriate window. So for instance, today is May 23rd. I have a child today. I decide that I want that child to be covered. I notify you. I have 31 days from today to notify you. The effective date of that change will be May 23rd because that is the birth date. You will have 45 days from today to get that change into your system. At the same time, let's say that it wasn't a birth, but I got married today. And I wanted to add my wife as of 6/1 because that's the effective date when you could add a new spouse. I could do that. I would need to tell you within 31 days of today. But then you would have all the way until July 15th to get that in because my effective date is 6/1. So you have 45 days from the effective date of the change. So this 45-day window is completely separate from the employee's notification or enrollment window, okay? So we just want to make sure that that's pretty clear. The big one to point out, the day that we kind of target, and it's really our finish line, if you will, for annual enrollment is October 15th, because for 9/1 transactions, October 15th is that golden date. So we want to make sure that if you have anything from 9/1, anything annual enrollment related, end of year terminations, whatever it was, if there's anything that is wrong and needs to be reported, get that to us by 10/15. Very, very important. All right, Corey, you want to run through some of these?
Absolutely. Yep. So Colin just talked about the processing guidelines or the 45-day period in which you have to enter the transactions. The next couple of pages, 40 and 41, go into more detail about the exceptions. So we talked about exceptions earlier in the presentation. And again, these two pages or these couple of pages just give more information on the exceptions when they're needed and how to request them and things of that nature. Pages 42 and 43 are going to talk about transition of care. So this is more related to if there's an employee coming over outside of the TRS health plan or a provider that was not in network and they're needed to continue that treatment. This is the pages that would discuss or give them information on where those forms need to go and what the forms are. So those forms would simply go over to Blue Cross Blue Shield. They would handle the processing of them and you would work directly with them on that. So on page 44, it talks about the out-of-state dependent coverage. So just a reminder, the primary and the primary plus plans, they are statewide plans. So they only have coverage throughout the state of Texas, unless it's, of course, it's for emergency care or something like that. If it's emergency, they're in the ER, they need emergency services, they would still have the coverage outside of Texas. If you have a dependent who, let's say, maybe is off at college, they're in a different state and you have one of these two plans, you'll want to fill out the out-of-state dependent form and send that out to, or send that over to Blue Cross Blue Shield for processing as well. All right, let's move on to page 45. So page 45 is just giving some reminders about ID cards. Everyone this year will receive a new pharmacy card for sure. And then those who are making changes or have changes in their health plan or the medical plan will receive an updated medical card as well. In a few moments, we'll look at some pages where to discuss on how you can access those as far as from a digital platform, and obtain like temporary IDs and things like that. But just in a couple more pages, we'll get to that. So we talked about your responsibilities as a administrator or someone who's on this call, and one of those is the billing. So we send out that billing each month. These are the dates we've charted out for you on page 47 that lets you know when the TextNet bill should be paid. So again, the one I like to point out, we mentioned it earlier, September 8th is when the bill posts for September. However, you'll still see you do it on the 15th on the 15th of September. And it's due on the 15th each month unless the 15th falls on a weekend. Then it's going to be due the business day prior to the 15th. So again, we've outlined all of those dates here, so that way you have a reference chart to look at should you need. Pages 48 and 49 are going to give information regarding COBRA. So 48 in particular is giving the contact information. So you'll notice here for the TRS ActiveCare plans, bswift administers those COBRA plans. So there's the phone number, the hours of operations, and the address. And then as well, we have the Baylor Scott and White as well as Blue Essential contact information for COBRA as well. Now, depending on the situation, the COBRA term may be different. So there's an option of 18 months, 29 months, or 36 months. On page 49, this will give you a chart to tell you, depending on the criteria of your particular employee situation, what they're eligible for. This is also outlined in the letter that they receive in their COBRA packet. It tells them how long they will be eligible to remain on COBRA as well. If you ever have any questions on that, the BA advocate team can give some general information if it's after the enrollment has occurred, or if there's an enrollment information that needs to be updated, something of that nature. The employee can contact the COBRA department directly to work through that. And that goes all the way up to page 52. It's still talking about COBRA. And if we go over to page 53, it's going to give you some valuable websites. So definitely one of our goals, one of our key things that we like to do is give resources. So this page is going to be a ton of different resources, ton of different websites that you can refer back to for different needs or different questions that you may need answers. So you will refer to these pages here. Also, a good rule of thumb, just before I move on, those websites that I mentioned, even the websites that have been put in the chat today, always a good rule of thumb to bookmark those just so you have them as a reference. But if you ever lose them, if you're ever not sure if the website's not working, just get in contact with your BA advocate and we can send those over to you as well. So on page 57, it's going to give a list of the different forms that you may meet. So we went through a few of them during the presentation, went through a few of them on previous pages in the admin guide. This is going to be a list of all the forms you may need. One I'm going to call out here for everyone on this call is the bswift access form. So if you're someone you've been hearing us refer to or state that you should be going to bswift to handle this, or you should be going to bswift to pull this, and you don't have bswift and are not sure what it is, definitely go ahead and complete that bswift access form. It's located on the BA toolkit. We get that over to your BA advocate. Not only will we give you access, but we'll reach out to you for additional walkthroughs and training as well. The next few pages are what we call like a crash course in bswift. So as we also mentioned earlier, some of you use bswift to do your enrollment, to take care of different transactions, things like that. You can refer to these next few pages for walkthroughs. It gives examples of what to look through. And again, this is not necessarily just for those that use bswift, because there are some functions that those who use the TPA will be able to use as well, such as pulling your bill, running a report, pulling the discrepancy report, things like that. But again, these pages here will give you kind of what we call that crash course or high level overview of how to use bswift. There's also a much more in detailed book that we have, or booklet that we have on the bswift portal. It's the BA Manager Guide. We have it again both for the TPA user and for the bswift user, and that one is very, very detailed. So if it's not here, if it's something that you don't see here as far as a process or a task that you need to complete, you have a couple of different options. Of course, you can contact your BA advocate. That's what we strongly encourage. But if not, if you're one that prefers to kind of be self-sufficient and just work independently, you can also look in the BA Manager Guide, and I assure you if that process is going to be in that guide, and it's going to look similar to this. So you'll see screenshots, step-by-step processes from start to finish on how to get those done. Last but not least, this is where the ID card information is. We talked a little bit about earlier. So you should, or you do have the opportunity to obtain access to what they call Blue Access for employers. So this gives you the abilities to be able to get ID numbers for your employees as well as temporary ID cards. There's similar functions that are coming for Express Scripts, but it's not here yet. This is why, again, we definitely encourage you to keep the digital link for the digital version of the admin guide, because when this is updated, this section will be updated here as well. All right. And that is the end of the admin guide.